Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her second recorded win over Amanda Serrano, the question now becomes, should Chantel Cameron be next for Katie Taylor? Well, she is in line. She is in position to fight her again via the WBC. Will Katie go for it? Should Chantel be next for Katie Taylor? The quite remarkable story of Katie Taylor had another incredible chapter added to it on Friday at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Another pulsating battle with Amanda Serrano was decided by wafer-thin margins. A one-point edge on all three judges' scorecards gave Taylor a repeat win over another future Hall of Fame fighter. Their rivalry will undoubtedly go down in history. Their legacy is only enhanced by the 20 rounds that they shared together, their sport. Also, there was obvious talk of a third dance between Taylor and Serrano, and while nobody would complain too much if they did complete their trilogy, Taylor does have far more appealing future options. Do we need a rubber match when Taylor currently leads their personal rivalry 2-0? Derek Chisora might disagree, of course. What happens if Serrano gets the verdict in a third fight with Taylor? Do they do a fourth fight? Do they just keep going on a perpetuity basis? There are fresh possible opponents in the likes of Alicia Baumgartner, Michaela Mayer. Either fight would have much intrigue. Both are outside of where Taylor currently resides in terms of weight, but stranger things have happened. A Taylor-Mayer fight, especially you sense, would appeal to the masses. The three-weight world champion Terry Harper could be in the mix also. A fight with Taylor at super lightweight could be sold as Harper, the current WBO lightweight champion, is trying to become a four-weight champion of the world. An easy sell, and Matchroom keeps everything in-house. Trust me, that matters. Thinking about those three matchups, it's my understanding that Alicia Baumgartner is currently a free agent. And if she decides to go somewhere else, say, Most Valuable Promotions, I think that would put distance between herself and that Katie Taylor fight. Alicia getting it would not be a priority to Matchroom. Why give it to Alicia when you could give it to Terry? That's what they might tell themselves. Why give it to Michaela when you could give it to Terry? Michaela's division, the welterweight division, is deep enough and has enough going on that there are plenty of good fights to make for her, irrespective of a Katie Taylor fight, and she's still over there on the top rank side of things. It's a little nauseating to see how much is expected of one fighter and how so little is expected of the others. They basically want Katie Taylor to fight anyone and everyone at or around these weights. While any of the above would suffice to different levels of acceptability and excitement, surely one fighter stands out in terms of who deserves the next shot at Taylor. A rivalry that is very much unfinished business. I want the Katie Taylor trilogy. I want my crack at redemption, so that will always be my main priority. That's what I want, and it would be a real shame if that third fight never happens, Chantel Cameron said recently. She does deserve it more than the others. Taylor and Cameron shared 20 truly magical rounds in Dublin last year. Honors were even. Cameron spoiled the emotional homecoming in that titanic first meeting before Taylor evened the score last November. Two brutal fights that left a thirst for more. In the immediate aftermath, words were said. There was frustration, resentment, and more. But in many ways, Cameron moved on. She left Jamie Moore for Grant Smith in Sheffield, a surprise to many, but the parting of ways with Eddie Hearn in Matchroom had perhaps been coming for some time.
She left Matchroom for Queensberry.
But the move to Warren and Queensberry shouldn't be a barrier to entry for a third fight with Taylor. If anything, it probably enhances it. The influx of Saudi money has brought the rival promoters together in seemingly perfect working harmony. That relationship with Turki El Al-Sheikh could be the missing link to Cameron getting her cherished third fight with Katie Taylor. A third fight between Taylor and Cameron could make both business and boxing sense. Money shouldn't be an obstacle, you sense, but it takes two to tango.
Don't forget that Frank and Queensberry are making the big move next year to DAZN in April.
Of course, Taylor is in a privileged position that she can decide her own future, with Cameron being the WBC interim champion and the mandatory challenger to Taylor. That could force Katie Taylor.
That could force the Katie Taylor sweepstakes in Chantel's favor. Timing does also seem to favor Cameron. Her most recent fight, a one-sided points win over Patricia Bergoult in Birmingham, was only 2 weeks ago. A return around May time for both is likely.
You can't force someone to do what they don't want to do, says of that possible fight that would close out her trilogy with Taylor. A realistic viewpoint, but Cameron will keep chasing nonetheless. She will hope her chase is duly rewarded. For many reasons, it should be. The thing is, she's been singing that tune since before she fought Katie Taylor. She even told me here on this channel on more than one occasion she didn't think the fight would ever happen. I told her it would.
And it did.
So maybe she's a little bit too pessimistic, petulant even. At this point, nobody should have it in their head that Katie Taylor ducks the smoke with anyone. Look at who she's fought. Look at her resume.
It's the best in the business.
Sanchez for the WBA, Bustos for the IBF, Vellante for the WBO, and Persoon 2 times for the WBC, Lenardatu for the WBO at 140.
Chantel Cameron 2 times for the Undisputed.
Amanda Serrano 2 times in defense of her own Undisputed. Noteworthy names like Jessica McCaskill, who went on to become a 2-time champion, 2-division champion, and Undisputed. Natasha Jonas, who went on to become a 2-division champion.
Unified.
She doesn't duck no smoke.
None.
Chantel shouldn't be so pessimistic when she's the one that thought the fight would never happen, just for it to end up happening twice.
She might get it.
It's a little hard to imagine that at 37 years old, Katie's gonna move up to welterweight. She might sit tight. She might stay put. Right there at 140, defend the Undisputed crown one more time, then call it a career. Okay, now yesterday, as part of Latino Night at Riyadh Season, we saw Zurdo Ramirez make his bid to become a unified cruiserweight champion against then WBO champion of the United Kingdom, Chris Billam-Smith. And the fight more or less played out as I expected it to, more so. Zurdo outperformed.
I went with Zurdo to win a points decision, but he exceeded my expectations.
He's fitting in nicely in today's cruiserweight division in what was his 4th fight at the weight and his 2nd title fight against the champion as a cruiserweight. Now, the first round was arguably Chris Billam-Smith's best round in a fight where I couldn't have had him winning more than 2 rounds. Looked like a 10-2 kind of fight, a 10-2 kind of ordeal. He picked up at least one other round along the way, but this was mostly Zurdo Ramirez just outmaneuvering him, out-hustling him, out-fighting him. In the first round, you could see the size and strength of Chris Billam-Smith, who's been a cruiserweight much longer than Zurdo, and there was some back and forth, but I gave that round to Chris. It's after that where things start to tilt towards Zurdo in a big way.
Another testament to how in the sport of boxing, big muscles don't account for much, as Chris was the noticeably bigger guy of the two. You could see he was a natural cruiserweight, where Zurdo was a lot fleshier and softer in the body.
But he's the one who exhibited more hand speed and more foot speed, more mobility, agility. He's the one who exhibited better cardio as the fight progressed, where Chris was badly losing his shape round after round.
Getting hit more and more.
One of the regular panelists here on the channel during the live streams, Julio, adequately stated that there was a difference in styles, contrasting styles, and we're not talking about the normal 3 base styles that we talk about. We're talking about regional styles.
Subsidiaries.
What you can expect from a European fighter, a British fighter, an American fighter, or a Mexican fighter. There are slight differences and subtleties that Chris Billam-Smith, he was noticeably more upright. His torso was more static than Zurdo's.
That, unfortunately for Chris, kept his head on the line for punches.
While Zurdo was a little bit more compact, bending at the knees, bending at the waist, hunkered down, chin tucked.
It makes for a smaller target and allows him to protect himself better against punches.
Good balance of offense and defense from Zurdo Ramirez, the moving target, and those pivots. Chris didn't know what to do about those.
Zurdo just stepping around him and then bobbing under the sweeping hooks.
Chris just didn't have the kind of mobility to respond to Zurdo's sudden and sharp movements, just continually stepping around him.
I told you he's got cement blocks for feet.
Lumbering around the ring, stumbling forward, he obviously couldn't match Zurdo's footwork. Precision fight, I think that's the best, the very best I've ever seen Zurdo Ramirez. Julian Chua and Malik Scotch are working wonders with this fighter.
Newly crowned WBA and WBO Cruiserweight Champion.
The prediction stuck, and Zurdo Ramirez is one step closer to becoming this division's undisputed champion.
There are no hard feelings between the fighters, but there are some between the fighters' corners.
I think Shane is a prick. I think he's arrogant. I think he's just an arrogant dude to me, man. Like he literally just started quacking about me for no reason. And once you do that to me for no reason, I don't like you. You know what I mean? I don't like you. Like, and then I actually thought his boxing brain was a little smarter because he said on camera, I had Deontay throwing jabs to the body. Why would I have a big man throwing jabs to the body? I don't know. Let's ask Lennox Lewis. Why was he jabbing Holyfield to the body? Let's ask Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko why they was most dangerous punching to the body and they was big men. Like, just ignorance. I just felt as though he took time out of his schedule to talk bad about me, and he's a prick, and he's insecure. And Daniel Dubois left him and became champion immediately. He became champion immediately. Daniel Dubois didn't know how to defend from a jab. Don Charles had to clean that up, and shout out to Don Charles because Don Charles deserved a heavyweight champion like he got. Don Charles is not arrogant. He don't come across as pompous. He don't walk around like he's better. Shane McGuigan comes across to me like a silver spoon brat prick. It's not like Shane said anything about my mom or my kids, no. But he said enough on camera to just totally disregard me. Totally disregard. And in my past interviews, when I was saying how tough Billam-Smith was, I was also saying, and he has a good trainer, Shane. Shane gets on camera and say what? I don't care if Malik called me a good trainer. He talking shit about my fighter. Man, you.
As stated, things got nasty between the fighters' corners. I remember before the fight, Malik said that Zurdo was going to outclass Chris Billam-Smith, that it was a mismatch. And Shane McGuigan didn't take kindly to that.
Though it would seem Malik Scott was on the money, that was a mismatch.
Even I didn't think Zurdo was going to outclass Chris Billam-Smith as good as he did, but he did. And, ahead of the fight, Shane didn't take kindly to Malik saying that it was a mismatch. He responded in a way that you would expect him to respond because he's put a lot of time in, Chris Billam-Smith. He got him to the WBO title, helped him avenge his loss to Richard Riakporhe. That when you say it's going to be a mismatch, he takes that as a personal attack because he's just as invested in his fighter as you are in yours.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Malik was right when he said that it was going to be a mismatch, but a lot of what Shane said, a lot of what he said was true too.
About Malik's work with Deontay Wilder?
And the promises he made on Wilder's behalf that ultimately didn't pan out. Thus is the situation when it's not you that has to deliver on that promise. It's somebody else. It's your fighter because you can't fight the fight for them.
So maybe what it is that in Zurdo Ramirez, Malik has a better student than what he has in Wilder. And Wilder, that's your buddy, that's your friend, but that doesn't mean he's gonna listen.
Or that he can execute at this stage in his career what you want him to execute. Shane is still the better trainer to me, with more time in. His success as a trainer is not limited to just one or two fighters.
Malik Scott and Julian Chua, God bless them both, they're still young in the game. They don't got as much time training fighters as Shane McGuigan.
They're doing all right. They're doing good work with Zurdo Ramirez. I can give them credit for that. We found out one or two things about Zurdo relevant to the ongoing unification discussion, undisputed in today's cruiserweight division.
It was a hell of a performance.
Wholeheartedly eye-opening. The 180 that Zurdo Ramirez has done.
We'll talk more about it in another video.
And so, there are very few professional courtesies between Malik Scotch and Shane McGuigan, but the fighters seem to be getting along well. The fighters still respect each other. It was an honor for me to fight him. He is a great champion. A victorious Zurdo Ramirez pays huge respect to Chris Billam-Smith, who at times, I thought he was going to go out. I thought he was going to go down.
Staying on his feet, battling exhaustion, battling Zurdo Ramirez.
I've always had so much respect for him. He was really good. A humble Chris Billam-Smith reflects upon his defeat to Zurdo Ramirez, saying, as the rounds went on, I just lost my speed, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what I told you. Where Zurdo Ramirez was able to keep the pace, Chris Billam-Smith was slowing down and losing his shape, getting hit more and more. As a result, at 34 years old, on the heels of his second professional loss.
Is it over for Chris?
Because it doesn't have to be. You hear a lot about Zurdo, you hear a lot about Jayo Pataya, and you heard a lot about Chris Billam-Smith at cruiserweight, but there's one other champion you don't hear that much about, Noel McGuigan. He's still WBC champion. He still has the WBC title. If Chris Billam-Smith so decides to stay in the cruiserweight division, he's still worth some money at Sky. He's still worth some money at Bournemouth. Maybe he can lure Noel to come and fight him.
Noel is the only one of the champions at cruiserweight that hasn't made an appearance at Riyadh season.
And this is a guy who's been around a long time, though I don't think he's ever made much in the cruiserweight division. Even fighting Lunga Makabu for the WBC title, I don't think he got paid much for that fight in that shoebox promoted by Don King.
I don't imagine he got much for that fight either.
Remember, he did make an appearance in the United Kingdom not that long ago on Sky Sports, calling out Chris Billam-Smith when Chris was still champion. Even without a belt, Chris is still worth some money. He could try to lure that guy for a fight to the UK next year. He can try if he stays at cruiserweight. Or Chris can go to Bridger. The WBC's fledgling division, a division between cruiserweight and heavyweight that doesn't get that much attention, Chris Billam-Smith would easily be the most recognizable name, the most recognizable face in that division, and the only fighter that has a major promotional outfit behind him. Not that long ago, Lawrence Okolie vacated his WBC Bridgerweight title. That title went to Kevin Lorena. Maybe Chris can challenge him for it.
I'm not going to say that fight is easy because I don't think it's easy, but it's certainly more winnable than the fights at heavyweight.
You could try to fight for the WBC Bridgerweight title or the WBA Bridgerweight title. They have a version of their belt in that division. So what you find at Bridgerweight are a lot of guys who just couldn't hack it at either cruiser or heavy, and that's not Chris. Chris made it. He became a champion, a full champion. He's got squabbles. Even if Zurdo beat him, that doesn't mean everybody else can or everybody else will.
He can come again.
And that's the gist of it. Being the only fighter with a major promotional outfit behind him, boxing on a major platform would give him a serious advantage over all the other Bridgerweights. Nobody knows those guys. Just an idea on the heels of his second professional loss to Zurdo Ramirez. The path for Zurdo is quite clear. You don't need that active an imagination to know what's next for Zurdo, but Chris's path, it is a little bit more murky, and that's just a suggestion. You can stay at cruiser, see about fighting Noel Gavor. If that doesn't pan out, you can move up to Bridger, see about winning a title up there, making some money up there.
There's options.
It doesn't have to be over for Chris Billam-Smith if he doesn't want it to be. He can come again.
One last hoorah. One last world title run.
Because if nothing else, this kid's got heart.